Well, of course, we had some technical difficulties, and most of the technical difficulties are timing. I'm on Texas time. Everybody that I ever want to bring on seems to be on California time or East Coast time. So we had a little bit of whoop, 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 accident today. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the other issue I really want to talk about, which is the credit crunch. I know people came here to be like, Erica, tell me how to get all these credit cards. But guess what? I have to do this. There's a book called Living Well with Bad Credit. Now, I saw this book in Barnes and Nobles and thought, didn't think anything of it. This book is a bestseller. Why? Because so many people have spent years kind of living off credit, right? They don't understand what it's like to have to go to a housing development or an apartment or a house for rent, and it really isn't based on your credit. It's based on your deposit or your work history, right? You're going to have a lot of these people all of a sudden having to buy a car from the sell their lot. People buying cars for cash, people going on Facebook Marketplace trying to find a good deal for a car. Why is this happening? We have a credit crunch coming. And for some people, credit has always been a status. It's always been the way they lived. They didn't think anything of it. The bank's just been raining money on them, and they've had a good old party. But here's the thing. If you don't know how to run a business without credit, if you don't know how to run a lot of things without credit, the next 5 years are going to be absolutely rough. Why am I saying this? Because there's a lot of situations where I run into people, businesses, real estate, where somebody's like, just take this off my hand. If you got cash, if you can make payments to me, I'll take it. Because we're living in a credit crunch. Now, many people say, no, Erica, I'm in this group or that group and we're getting all kind of cards. Yes, there is still this kind of open space. And this is kind of why I've been ranting about the 90 days window that you need to go build your war chest. Clockwork, he is not here. The show is not going to be about him today. When we get reconnected, we'll bring him on. Okay? Focus back on what I told you the show was about. Focus back, okay? Talking about the credit crunch. Since the show is not with the author going to be here, the show is going to be the credit crunch and living well with bad credit. The reason why I bring this up is more and more you're going to see people who they can't get ahead, but their definition of get ahead was getting credit cards, going on vacation, traveling with points. You hear all these people say, oh, I got to travel with points. I would do a lot of phone calls, I think it was last year, and people would be like, Eric, I just really want to start a business and I ain't got no money. I'd be like, oh my God, let's go figure out what you can do. Well, then we get halfway through the conversation and they got $20,000, $30,000 on credit cards. And I would be like, use those cards. Oh no, Erica, I can't use those cards. Those cards are for points. Those cards are for trips. Those cards are for goofing off. And what I end up thinking is, oh my gosh, these people don't realize they already have the money to start the business they want. But what they're saying is they don't want to risk that pretty credit score. They don't want to risk their vacation points to use that money. And this is why, when I said this, is I have had so many phone calls of people who have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in lines of credit. Like the credit altogether equals out about $80,000. And they got it when they had the great job. They got it when they had the great position, or they had a great, they just were in college. Well, now, how do we pay the bills? How do we pay the cards? If you go look at Ty Lopez when he had a lot of the credit stuff on, and you go look at several of the Credit Felix, Credit Ninja, Credit Susu, you name it, you go all over YouTube right now. And people are like, oh my God, how do I pay the cards back? It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. So the kid's always like, well, you could just start a business. You could just do this. You could just authorize user. You could do this or that. And I really want to tell him, no, these people have already spent the money on the card and they're seriously trying to figure out how do they pay it back. They didn't have a plan. They had a plan of like, oh, I got free money. I'm going to go live well. And if you go read the book, the funniest part about the book, Living Well with Bad Credit, It's all the things I see people in the wedge do. Now, what do I mean in the wedge? People in the wedge, I'm being careful. People in the wedge drive around neighborhoods looking for the for rent sign that's red with the basic handwritten numbers. Why? They won't get approved at an apartment. When I worked in apartment management, if you worked at a new complex, dude, chill out. When we worked at a new complex, we would relax the rules so people could get in. Now, what does that mean? We relax the rules. They could have a freaking eviction. They could have like bankruptcy, all kind of stuff on their credit. But because it was a brand new complex and we were trying to get them in the door, we would just make them pay extra deposit, or we make them pay a full month's rent, or they wouldn't get the whole you get a month or two off thing. We would save that for people with pretty credit. Now, why am I saying this? People are telling me, oh man, apartments, everything's going to be like 50% off. And the reason I'm saying it's going to wait till February, and I keep saying this, is because people are gassing out those cards. This is the downward slope of them gassing out what's left on those cards. And they're going to gas out what's left on unemployment. Again, if you see people are like, oh, Houston, Texas is a horrible place because they're going to evict all these people. Now, if we go door by door, a majority of those people got those unemployment checks. Majority of those people got some kind of credit card. And because they didn't use it to pay for their housing, now they're in this predicament. Like, you knew this was coming. This wasn't a surprise. But it looked like we might have a surprise here. We might have got our guest back. Uh-oh, everybody. I might have to change the title back again. There you go. All right, so here we go, you guys. I'm going to bring him on. Hey. Well, I thought I lost you. I thought you fell out of a tree somewhere.
No, you know what happened? I'm in Connecticut, so 6 p.m. for me was not 6 p.m. for you. But hello. How's it going?
It's going well. Hey, everybody. Look, we got a special guest on the show. If you guys are excited to hear from our guest, put a 1 in the comments so I can see that 1. Drop a bunch of 1s. Now, I was just going on a little rant telling them that, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to live well with bad credit because they've been playing games. But yeah, I was bringing it up because that's what's going to happen to some people. Some people are this is true, Kelvin Davis. They need to let them benefits run out first. They're going to exhaust they're going to exhaust their cars. They're going to exhaust everything. So everybody drop a 1 if you're excited for our guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we're going to reorient the show. Sir, go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
So my name is Rakim Sabri. I appreciate your flexibility. What can I say? I'm a financial educator. Did a TEDx, so I'm a TEDx speaker, 2-time author. I work in financial services by day, and I'm very passionate about financial empowerment. So I spend a lot of my time and energy on social media, speaking to financial empowerment, different from financial literacy, because I feel like there's a lot of people who do talk about financial literacy. There's not enough, but there's a lot of people who do talk about it. But my specific area of focus when it comes to personal finances is your mindset and the approach to managing your finances and that relationship that you have with money.
So explain empowerment, right? Because empowerment's a little bit different because I see everybody's like, I'm just trying to get people the knowledge. I think there is a level of knowledge most people, if they Google for 2 seconds, will know, right?
Absolutely.
Empowerment is different because what's your definition of empowerment?
I think empowerment is a difference between knowing how to do something and believing that you can do it, right? I spend a lot of time focusing on that belief part because, like you said, people can quickly Google information and find out, how to get involved in the stock market, how to get involved with real estate, how to get involved with saving, how to get involved with cryptocurrency. I mean, there's just so much out there. We live in the age of information. But there's a lot of analysis paralysis that occurs because people don't know how to take the first step, or they won't take the first step. just simply because, they're afraid or they don't believe that it's something that either they deserve or that they're capable of.
So I love the shirt, by the way, you guys. If you notice that shirt, that's our. I ran around for 2 years and like 100 pictures with that shirt. Good guy. Good guy.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I saw your picture on Black Wealth Renaissance. Love those guys over there. And essentially, it said this author went from a credit card with $500 to $60,000 limit.
Yep.
Give us a little bit on that.
So I'll tell you, it wasn't, overnight. And I think a lot of people, I'm not going to say that I'm one for clickbait, but I knew that people would react to that title because it's just, it's unheard of, right? Some people don't have 60,000 in credit limits across all the credit cards that they have. But I work in financial services. I've been working in financial services since 2011. I started working for a bank when I was 21 years old as a part-time teller. And didn't know anything about credit, didn't know anything about saving, about investing, about retirement. I was just completely, green to this world of personal finance. And as part of my employment, I was eligible for, the checking accounts and that whole kind of thing for free. And so as a part of their selling, they say, oh, you want to apply for a credit card? And I had applied for credit cards before and had always been denied. So I shared that. I was like, yeah, no, it's not worth it. Like, I'll get denied. And they're like, oh, no, you should try it. You should try it. And of course, because I didn't know anything about credit, I was just like, sure, like, go for it. I'm going to get denied, but whatever. But I didn't get denied. I got approved. And when I got approved, I got a letter that had my credit score in it. And it made reference to my credit report. And so I had a low limit. And I was just like, well, what is this? And at the time, like I said, I didn't know anything about credit. So I had a student loan that was delinquent that I hadn't paid. I was 120 days late. So, every time you're 30 days or more late, they knock your credit report. And so I had, it was actually technically 2 loans that I had delinquencies on up to 120 days. And of course, that impacts your ability to get credit. That impacts the creditor's perspective on your ability or willingness to pay them back. And so that was something that I had struggled with, but I knew after I gotten that credit card and, working in the environment, that credit was important. And so I had to take some drastic action to improve my credit standing. And so I did. I tried to consume as much as I could about credit, knowing that these delinquencies on my credit report were going to haunt me for, the better part of 7 to 10 years. And so instead of being defeated by that, I said, well, what can I do to kind of navigate around that obstacle? And, that looks different for different people. And I don't want to necessarily give direct advice in terms of what that process looks like. But what I can tell you is, as you can see, I multiplied the amount of credit available to me over time. So I think I got to 60 this year. And that was 2011 until now. Definitely not the only credit card that I own. Certainly the highest limit that I carry. But a lot of my cards carry high limits too, and just kind of understanding the credit game and how to manipulate credit in that way was definitely paramount to me increasing my credit score. For a long time, I was well over 820. I think I just bought a new car in November, and when they pulled my credit, my score was 830. So just being responsible with the credit over the time, that credit history definitely plays a big part.
It does. And so, the craziest part about credit is there's so many different theories and people, oh, you should do this and that. And it's like a sea of noise, right? I have videos that are 4 or 5 years old on credit. And people are like, no, this isn't right. This isn't right. And I'll bring someone on and they'll say the same exact thing I said 3, 4, or 5 years ago. And people are like, oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Hold on a second. You know, we get these office deliveries. They be like, I ain't leaving nothing at the door. I'm opening the door. It'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm scared.
Don't worry.
Um, but part of why I bring this up is um, some people can do tricks of the trade. Some people can pay down all their credit card balances this month, and that score pop up 60, 70, 80 points. Some people get their first card and it's like, here's $500. Here's five. That's all you're gonna get.
Yep.
What are some things you do now to help people kind of get on that same journey as you?
Well, for one, I definitely socialize, and I think that's very important. People have a tendency to achieve a level of knowledge, and they feel like they're gonna have to hoard it, keep it to themselves. So I like to share my story. I like to engage with people and let them know, like, I was 21 years old when I got that card, and most 21-year-olds with credit cards of $500, they don't know what to do with it. So kind of really, like I said, I was aggressive about my learning and the strategy that I used to grow my credit, but I was disciplined in that process. So talking about discipline, talking about accountability, understanding the game, like what are the factors that lead into a good credit mix. Because, like you said, you can do all the right things. You can, keep your balance under 30%. You can pay on time every month. You can have no balance. You can pay everything in full, but the other factors are going to come into play, right? They're looking for a mix of credit products, and that's revolving and non-revolving. They're looking for not too many credit inquiries, right? So you're not, desperately applying. And I budgeted out my inquiries so that I knew that on this day at this time, my inquiry will fall off. They're looking for the good management of the credit. They're looking for credit history, and the length of credit history was something that I struggled with for a long time because, you can't speed up that process, or at least you can't speed up that process for you.
Yes.
But you can leverage somebody else's credit to help speed up that process. And unfortunately for me in that time, I didn't have anybody that I can kind of use to do that. But I've certainly been that person for other people since I've gotten to where I've gotten. So for me, it was just kind of like building myself up over time on my own devices. And I think that's something that I'm very proud of, because I didn't have the help. I didn't have the safety net, really, that a lot of people do have going into, anything that's relating to their finance, and then to be able to give that gift to somebody else. But also knowing the no-nos, right? The things to stay away from. Not co-signing anybody's credit.
Let me tell you, did you see Aisha Selden's post? How that thing went on for like ever. She basically had a post about not co-signing cars, and the responses where parents were mad with them about not co-signing. All kind of people was going off about co-signing.
Oh yeah. I love Aisha's stuff.
Yeah.
Anytime she spits something, I was just like, oh, let's see, let's look at the comments. And I like her approach, and certainly her approach is her approach. Like, I think a lot of people get caught up in and Aisha will tell you in a second, like, she's not a guru, right? She's like, I'm not a guru. She's just doing her own thing, but she's dropping gems from her experience. And a lot of people get caught up in this really, for lack of a better word, herd mentality, right? They're like, oh, this person has a lot of followers. This person is doing something. They're projecting an image. I'm going to do things their way. And one of the things that I really like to talk about when I'm talking about my journey and my approach is that I don't subscribe to any one guru. Like, I love Robert Kiyosaki's content, but we have a love-hate relationship. I love Grant Cardone's content, but we have a love-hate relationship.
Hey, don't talk about my Uncle G like that.
He put out some good stuff.
Listen, I always give a disclaimer. I'm heavily invested. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I love him. I love him. I sent him a copy of my book after I published it. And I sent him and other celebrities copies of my book. And he's the only person that responded. Sent me a handwritten note. Now, I don't know if he hand wrote it, but sent me a handwritten note back, congratulating me and telling me, good luck. And that meant the world to me. Like, I'm a fan of his for life now. Dave Ramsey, he's another one. I can appreciate his methods, but his approach is not something that, I fully embrace. I'm, like I said, definitely in the Grant Cardone camp. Like, I believe leverage is important to wealth building. And, Dave Ramsey kind of discourages that, right? Where he says, don't use the credit card, don't use credit, like get rid of debt as quickly as possible. So, Robert Kiyosaki's approach is what got me started. And so, I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for him and his method. But you don't have to subscribe to one and just be committed to one over everybody else. And I think that's so important. Understanding that personal finance is personal. What looks right for you at 21 is going to look different for you at 30 and 45 and 60. And, you're listening to, like, I love Aisha, but she is much further along in her career than I am. She has a ton of, experience, hands-on experience, a ton of, knowledge in the real estate world and in the stock market world, capital. She talks about leverage, but not over leveraging, right? Like, she's very much, some of the stuff that she talks about is very reminiscent of like Dave Ramsey stuff. Like, get paid off those mortgages and pay them off quickly. But that's where she is. Like, that's where she is. That's not where I am. And so I think it's important to be able to critical think for yourself when it comes to financial education, personal finance, and then pick and choose like what strategy you want to use. And instead of being, and I think my message is definitely going to be geared towards people in their 20s, instead of being the irresponsible 20-year-old who just like splurges, right? Be the irresponsible 20-year-old who's trying out different financial strategies for growth. And not, I'm just going to go buy a pair of Jordans. I'm going to go buy a chain. I'm going to go clubbing every weekend, because it's trial and error. A lot of my success has been trial and error. I can't say that I've made any big boo-boos in my 20s as it relates to credit. I'm in a good place in terms of credit. But I can say that COVID taught me a thing or two about what my strategy looked like previously, right? I had no cash savings. I talk about that all the time. I put all my extra cash into investments immediately.
Listen. We learned the hard way on that. I'm one of those that, we're going to put 95% of everything into some investment. And then somebody was like, hey, I need 40K. And I'm like, shit, I got to liquidate something to give to you. I'm there's going to be a part 2 to Smartphone Millionaire book. Like, hey, can we send some cash over here to the side?
But back to credit too, like understanding the credit strategies and I have a hard time talking about credit too because I don't want to say something that somebody like Rakim said. And then
no. See here, you got to live in your truth. This is what I tell people. You got to come on this show. You got to be bold and confident. There's 235 people in here, and they can all think whatever they want. But this is the thing. I know where people are going. Right? Grant Cardone's big on like just pick one guy and follow whatever that guy's thing is. But you have to look where somebody's at in their chain of development, right?
Absolutely.
Prime example, Dave Ramsey, credit ruined his life. So it's like no discipline. So now it's just like straight beans and rice. Now, honestly, if you have no discipline or you have bad habits, great place to start. Is it a place to stay forever? No.
Absolutely.
Right? If you're Grant Cardone, don't ever buy a house. I'm sorry. If you're in the South and you're a Southerner and there's a 50K house around the corner, for the love of Pete, buy the house, have a house. I meet people in Atlanta paying $2,000 in rent for a big old house, and you're like, but you could just buy one around the corner. Okay.
So that was my introduction to Grant Cardone. Really, I saw a video. It was 60 seconds, so I don't think that it was fair, right? And he was saying, people buy houses are stupid. Like, don't buy a house. And I'm like, what? I had just bought a house. I'm like, what? Like, how could he say this? And this is contradicting everything that Robert Kiyosaki ever talked about. But the thing is, Grant Cardone was talking about buying a residential house just for you, a single family, right? He's not talking about investing in multi-family properties, and how leveraging investing in a multi-family property from the perspective of FHA, right, where you're putting down 3.25, and that's it. You're owning this property. How easy of a tool that is for people, particularly people of color, to get involved with real estate. And so I was just like, man, like I thought it was irresponsible at first for him to say that, but also understanding too that his audience is not me, right? Understanding who these people's audience is. Dave Ramsey's content is not geared towards me. Susie Orman's content is not geared towards me. And so then that put me in a position where I said, you know what, I need to create my own platform, right? Where I can speak to my experience, where I could speak to people who are dealing with the anxieties of experiencing poverty, right? I talk about it. I grew up on Section 8. I grew up with food stamps. Like, I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to not eat. And how do you take somebody who's experiencing that financial trauma, right? Who didn't believe that it was possible to own, who all they know was apartments and the projects and, you know, those situations. How do you take them and you put them in a position where they can then grow? And that looks different for different people, and that looks different for different people in different places, right? I grew up in New York, right? Rent is really expensive. So, you know, to tell somebody in New York to go out and buy a house in, you know, Westchester County versus, like you said, somebody down south, like the difference in the price point is going to be determining whether or not they can pull the trigger on that. And so it's just that drove home for me, like, personal finance is truly personal. And it's important to understand the foundation and the principles around what makes it work. But, you know, it's important for you to think for yourself too. Like, if it makes sense, then it makes sense.
I mean, the biggest thing about the home thing, especially because we live in a society where banks were not giving you the money, and now banks are, and the children of the people who couldn't get the loans are like, no, I don't want no loan. I don't care about that. And so I think there is a sometimes cultural insensitivity to hearing that. And this person's promoting, never buy a house. And, you know, where I'm from in the South, there's always stories of cousins from New York and Ohio coming down to stay at whose house? The North Carolina cousin or grandma or auntie's house, the South Carolina, like, there's somewhere for them to come back to because they couldn't afford New York, or they couldn't afford Ohio, they couldn't afford whatever. And so I just always think, take it with a grain of salt. And like, that's why I posted Ronald's here, you know, eat the fish, spit out the bones kind of conversation, right?
Absolutely.
What are some ways you're talking to people? You did a TED Talk, and now where did you do your TED Talk?
In Hartford.
Hartford.
Yeah.
I used to get a lot of consulting calls out of there. I don't know what y'all doing out there. Y'all wow. So is your TED Talk here on the internet?
It is. If, literally, you type in my name, TED Talk, it'll pop up. I was fortunate. So I did a TEDx. So I didn't go to the actual, like, the big TED conference, but I guess the people at TEDx really like my talk, so they put it on their TED website. And I talk about exactly what I just said, right? My experience growing up. You know, I'm very visual in terms of painting that picture. You hand washing clothes in the sink and having to hang it up on the shower rod to dry for school the next morning, stuff like that. But my call to action in that TED Talk is to build a team, financially build a team. Surround yourself with people who know what they're talking about, and it doesn't have to be one person. So I talk about, you know, my accountant, my real estate agent, my lender, a financial advisor. You know, surrounding yourself with mentors, people who have experienced those things that you're looking to accomplish, and then taking that knowledge and sharing it with other people. So I end it with a quote: "Each one teach one, each one reach one. If you know, teach. If you don't know, learn." And yeah, that's up on it's up on the TED website. It's on YouTube. I have it on my website. So any Rakim Sabri TEDx, you'll see it.
Big part of the each one teach one. There's a guy called Ray Higdon, and he'll never get the credit for it, but he was big on this: invest, learn, teach. And he started this about 6 years ago, and now he's just now coming back around and doing a lot more ads. But many people don't know. His name is Ray Higdon. Invest, learn, teach. It was a method of, like, invest in books, training, conferences, seminars, learn the information, and then teach. Why? Because so many people, 98% of people are afraid of public speaking, right? Absolutely. And then there's just, you know, like earlier when you said in the interview, like, people don't want to share. It's not they don't want to share. They're scared to share this information. And somebody be like, no, that doesn't work for me. They're scared of being disliked. And Bruce Lee has this quote: have the courage to be disliked. Because it's what we're talking about even now as far as credit, people are going to be like, well, that doesn't apply to me, or my credit's bad, or I'm not in my 30s. They're finding reasons to kind of, oh, I don't want to hear it, right? So
Absolutely.
some people had a question, and I'm going to share some of their questions. What about collections? How to handle collections? Does someone pay, or can it be involved? Because not the loan or credit card lender. Basically, they're given the, hey, the original person doesn't owe it anymore. Should I pay it?
Right. I've been asked that question. I don't have a lot of experience with collections, but what I can say is that in terms of the ability for that collections item to remain on your credit report after the 7 years, it has to be removed generally. So it depends on where you are in the process. I think ethically, morally, right, if you are responsible for the debt, that you should pay it. But obviously there's ways to kind of navigate and finesse around that. But I've heard different things, and like I said, because I don't have the experience in terms of navigating collections, I've heard that you don't have to pay it. I've heard that you do have to pay it. I've heard that if you acknowledge it at some point after the 7 years, that it comes back. But I can't speak to that process intelligently.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of zombie debt in this whole COVID washout,
Oh,
right?
I
Because they've
believe
got this people like, oh yeah, don't make no payments for 6 months. Yeah, you guys are good. And then probably 2021, 2022, you're going to see a lot of like repo and people getting mail. They're like, you told me I didn't have to pay that. It's going to be a lot of that going on.
Well, I've seen too, with the deferring the mortgage payments, that there are some institutions that are saying, yeah, you don't have to pay for 3 months, but at the end of that 3 months, people are not realizing that they have to pay all 3 months at once, and that's going to be, I think, devastating to a lot of people too, because certainly if they couldn't pay the 1 month, they're not going to be able to pay the 3. So it's tough. Aisha, again, she mentioned on Twitter, I believe, at the beginning of all this, like, if you can afford to pay your bills, like, pay them. And, people are thinking that they're finessing and getting away with, paying what they're supposed to be paying.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm somebody who doesn't like to take those kind of shortcuts. So certainly it has to make sense and be legal. But, if I can't speak to that process intelligently, then I won't give advice on it.
So how many years did it take for you to go from 500 to 60,000?
I started in 2011. So what's that, 8 years?
2019 is when you got the biggest?
No, it was either towards the end of last year or the beginning of this year. So what was that, 8 or 9 years?
Y'all hear that? 8 or 9 years. No. So I have a rule of thumb. I tell them like about, asking for credit line increases around every 90 days to 6 months, right? So that it's normal. It's not out of the norm for you. Like the company expects it. Like if you do it, they're not surprised. They're not like, oh, why they want that? Because you've been building a habit of it. But yeah, 8 years, you stayed on it for real.
And sometimes they do ask, they're like, why do you want to increase your credit limit? And I think people panic when that happens. If you get to speak to a person, right? Because now it's becoming very automated. Like they won't even let you speak to a credit analyst. I knew working in financial services, working for the bank that held the credit card, that I can go call a credit analyst and be like, hey, like this is the reason why I want it. But also too, I didn't just focus on building that credit card. So over the period of those 8 years, I mean, I'm at a point where I have like, I think 9 credit cards. And over the period of time, I would request increases on all the cards, but I would cycle through which cards I was requesting increases for. So, from a credit risk perspective, certainly, they're going to look at everything on your credit report. They're going to look at all the cards that you have, how you're managing debt, how you're managing the balances, are you paying it back on time? Where are you keeping it in terms of utilization? And then do you know what you're talking about, right? So there's times where I was like, listen, I want a credit line increase because I know that in order for me to maintain under 30% utilization, that I need to have a higher credit line. And sometimes it was like, okay. So it's like I said, it's been trial and error, and certainly across multiple cards. I think in total, with all of the credit card limits factored, I definitely have over 100,000. I mean, that's 2 credit cards, but I'm somewhere in between 100 and 200,000 in available credit.
Amanda Peace put, and Susie Orman out here telling people not to pay. Debt does not play. Susie Orman, what did she just do? She did something to get back in the news. She talked about the fire movement people. The fire movement people was it was a great marketing strategy. Like fire movement, if you meet my friends, you'd be like, Erica, your friends are fire movement. I'm like, no, they just worked in tech, made a lot of income, and was able to have no debt. That's what it is. And people are missing the whole point about making more money. People love going, they're a minimalist. They don't eat out. Look at Graham Stephan. He drinks coffees from home, blah, blah. I'm like, y'all, it's the income part, that part.
Well, what's funny too about that, Grant Cardone, I forget what I was watching. I might have been watching his GrowthCon event where he was talking about, he's like, I don't want to be the guy that can't drink coffee when I want to. Like, what kind of life is that? If I'm going to be wealthy, like I want to be able to enjoy it. But I've done some research on the FIRE movement, and it sounds appealing, certainly, when you think about being able to retire at 30 versus 65. But then you think about, too, like the restrictions in terms of the lifestyle that you live. And
because you really live them.
Yeah.
and it's going to keep on coming through. Like, you're going to keep living like that.
Exactly. And
you're not just going to turn it off.
And I think, too, from a scientific perspective, I don't remember what article I read or who said it, but when you retire early, like you're not taking advantage of the compounding, right? Versus 30 years, you retire at 30 and, you live to beyond 60, that's 30 years of compounding that you don't get to take advantage of, which is, incredible growth that you're missing out on with keeping your money invested. But of course, you have to draw on that money to live. And so it's just, it sounds nice. Like you said, a great marketing strategy. I like that. I'm going to use that. Great marketing strategy, but not practical.
So basically someone asked, do I think you could have gotten your limit up to 60K sooner than 8 years? Yes and no. It depends on your income. So if he started out and he's making 20K a year and every 90 days he's asking for an increase, well, they're going to give it to him maybe once, maybe twice. But if his income is changing, right, or something's changing about his profile, then yeah, it could be possible. And also you got to think about is your credit mix. So let's say you have 4 different credit cards, you're keeping them moving. Usually they don't have a problem. Boop, 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 boop. Because they're going to mirror each other. So a lot of people have been going crazy for Navy Federal Credit Union. They got groups all over Facebook. They literally shut down the loophole in approximately 90 days. Can you imagine that? Like literally the one place that does the loophole got over $25 million, and these like people trying to be members, and they're like, what's happening? We don't know what's going on. The government's like, yo, what is going on over there? And they're like, shut it down, loophole shut down. So, I love the power of the internet to speak to people. I love it that we all can tell each other a little, hey, Carl, go over here and do this. But it's also funny because it will get stuff shut down.
Definitely. I think too, it's worth noting in that journey to 60K, and that certainly wasn't something that I planned for, right? I knew that I wanted to continue to grow my limits, and I have a purpose in mind when it comes to having these limits. But I don't think that the average everyday person is going to be walking around with, 9 credit cards and, almost $200,000 worth of credit limits. But my strategy was unique to me in that, I talked about a little bit earlier, not having that safety net financially, right? Like if I get into an issue, I can't call my mom and my dad or my uncle and my cousin and say, hey, I need $10,000 tomorrow because my roof is leaking. And so for me, building credit was important because it was creating a safety net so that I can continue to move forward, but also understanding too, like if I need to fundraise for a business venture, like I could tap my credit line much quicker than I can.
Your own self.
Right. And so looking at credit certainly as a tool and not as an extension of income was important in all of this, and not looking at the credit card itself, but looking at the overall practices. Like I did things like go to a credit union and put $2,000 in cash on deposit in a CD and borrow against it. paying it back over time so that I can demonstrate installment payments and have that added to my credit mix. So, looking at the big picture in terms of credit, instead of saying, well, my goal is to get my card to 60K. Before 60, it was at 50, and I was like, 50 is more than enough. Like, what do I need to increase it for? But because I had gotten to that practice, like you said, every 6 months, a year of asking for the increase, I said, you know what, let me just go for this. Let me see, what's going to happen. And they said, yeah.
For sure. And here's the thing. I always tell people, what's the mission? What's the goal, right? And you'll talk to people, they're like, I want to travel. I want to travel. And you're like, all right, okay, calm down. That's their mission. They want to travel. They want to, do whatever they do with the points. I also want people to understand, like, okay, you have this credit. What, prime example, I'm in this Facebook group, and people every day, like clockwork, like I can just hit my phone like clockwork. Somebody's in there posting, I hit 750, everybody. I hit 750. And people be like, cool, what you gonna do with it? Shut your mouth. Mind your business. Just look at the score. And I'm like, okay, we looked at it. What you gonna do? And so it's just a tool. And that's kind of what I was telling in the beginning of the show. Like, people start realizing, like, it's a tool. If you don't have access to it, do you have other tools in your tool chest? Do you know how to work your life or your business or your income to increase? That's the part that I think people are missing.
And there is such thing as having too much credit, even if you don't use it, right? So, like,
right.
I highly doubt that if I apply for a credit line increase on this card that I'm talking about, that I'm going to get it, like you said, based off of my income, based off of, a variety of factors. But, like, what's the reason for it? Like, these credit analysts, like, it's a full-time job, the credit analysts and, credit risk associates who are like, okay, like, what is the risk of extending this individual this much credit with this much income and this much in expenses, right? What's their debt to income? All those factors play a part in it. So, I'm just going to echo the sentiment around what's your mission? Like, why are you looking for this credit? If you're not going to do anything with it, then there's no point.
Well, at that point, we hope there's an educational point. Like, they've accomplished something. They've got the 750. Yeah. Now, what things can they do with the 750? I mean, let me tell you, if I could tell you how many emails I get a day, like, Erica, I got 750. I'd be like, all right, what do you want to do? I want to partner with you. And do what? I got this 750. And I'd be like, but what cash do you have? What are we buying? What are these things? And so you start talking in multiple ways of, like, you need to do some more research or dig through your thought process on it. So C-Dub, no, you can rewind the show. His name is Rocket. Oh my God, it'd be 42 minutes in. They'd be like, can you do all that over? Just do it all over. Introduce yourself one more time and say, let them know where you did your TED Talk.
Sure. Rakim Sabri is my name. I did my TED Talk in Hartford. So it was TEDx Hartford was the organization. You can type in my name, Rakim Sabri, and TEDx, and my TED Talk will probably definitely pop up. Actually, you could type in my name and my TEDx will pop up, probably one of the first things that come up. But also my website, rakimsabri.com.
For sure. Velocity, income rate. Yeah, exactly. Burn rate, big money growth. People have a lot of burn rate. Why is there such a thing as having too much credit? Could you answer what you said there?
Yeah. So I talked about credit risk, right? So there's within the financial services and definitely lending areas, they have the underwriters who determine your eligibility to receive these funds, but they certainly look at your profile. So they look at, it's crunching numbers really. What's the likelihood that you're going to pay them back? What's the likelihood over time that you're going to be able to pay them back if you use all of the limit that they extend to you? They look at your credit history. They look at your credit score. They look at your income. And I'm sure there's an algorithm involved. I've never worked in that particular area, but I'm sure there's an algorithm involved that determines, whether or not you are a credit risk or whether or not you're credit responsible. I've had credit analysts tell me and, kind of reviewing my situation, like, you've managed this card very responsibly. And I'm like, yeah, no, thanks. But so look at it from this perspective. Let's say that you go from 0 to 60K on a credit card, but you don't have any history to back that 60K. and then you max out the 60K. Now the bank is liable for that loss of 60K because they're extending you credit in that amount. And so to protect themselves, because we know the banks are here to make money, they want to determine whether or not it's responsible to extend you that much money, or rather that much capital, and whether or not you're going to be able to pay it back timely and in its entirety.
Right. Also, I tell people it's line position. So some people get credit line increases. Some people go get lines of credit from their bank. So now if you come back and ask the bank for something else, well, what is the position they're in? Number one, you got a credit card with them. Number two, you got a line of credit with them. Number three, okay, so if they give you additional thing, now they're third in position on this third thing they've given you. Can you pay it back? Or I've even heard them say, like, I think it was a merchant saying someone was like second on the line, and they were like, we're not going to do it because we're not first. It's the same thing with like home loans, equity loans. It's position. It's calculated in the system.
And they'll also look at your relationship too. Like, my credit card, the 60K one that we're talking about, is with my primary bank. Mm-hmm. So I've been banking with them since I started there. So, like I said, 8 or 9 years. I have a direct deposit that comes in there. They can see the growth of my income over a period of time. They see, me paying my bills. They see I have my investment accounts with them. I have considerable assets with this particular bank. And so my relationship with them is such that they would feel comfortable because they know how to get to the other parts of my money. Mm-hmm. Whereas a company like, I'll use Citibank as an example, I only have a credit card with them. And so they would probably be less likely to give me that much credit because there's a lot more risk there. They don't see that I'm invested in, their company through my primary relationship. And so that's going to definitely play a role as well.
For sure. I think it's really important. I keep trying to tell people, like, if you want to establish something with a bank, even if you don't have all your accounts there, when you go apply for unsecured line of credit, anybody who has the funding course know what I'm talking about. Hey, I'm looking to see what you guys offer if I'm going to move my other accounts over, kind of conversation. Because again, it's like you come in, they don't know you from Adam, you want a line of credit. What can you show them that they will be able to be repaid? There's a lot of it. So, but was there anything you wanted to let everybody know? Is there like other than your website and the TED Talk, what are some ways that people can reach out to you?
I'm very active on Instagram and Twitter. And everything is my name. So Rakim Sabri, Instagram, Rakim Sabri, Twitter. My website I update regularly. So anytime like I publish an article, so I do some freelance writing sometimes for the Griot. Anywhere else that will have me really. I like to just kind of expand my platform in different ways. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. So, just if you type in my name, a lot of those things will come up. I have a book available on Amazon called Financially Irresponsible. I actually have it right here.
Hold it up. You got to hold a little bit right there and then hold it. Don't move because somebody's going to come back later in this video like, what was that book? One more time? Like, okay, y'all, we got it up there for 5 minutes. Y'all better wrote it down.
So, I talk about my experience, but, going back to the beginning of this segment, I talk about it from the position of financial empowerment. So my book is divided into 2 parts. The first part speaks to your spiritual and mental relationship with money. So the first chapter of my book is Money is Not the Root of All Evil. That's the vibe, right? That's what we're doing.
People try to use that as a way to like explain everything in life. I don't need all that much money because it's the root of all evil. I'm like, wait, what? And the Bible talks about money like 50,000 times. Okay.
So I'll give you guys I guess we'll call it a preview. My rebuttal in the first chapter of my book to Money is the Root of All Evil is a story in Matthew that the 10 talents where and I'm not preaching by any means, but God gives his servants, I think 3 different servants, talents. And one of the servants buries his talent and just doesn't do anything with it, while the other ones grew what it was that they were provided. And so I say that not only is it not evil for us to desire to acquire money and grow our money, but it's also a responsibility that we have to do so. So Yeah, Financially Irresponsible is available on Amazon. That's the only place that it's available. So if you type it in, like I said, if you type in my name, all of that stuff comes up. Everything comes up, but definitely Financially Irresponsible. I put a lot into that. Instagram, Twitter, growing my platform. I think I reached like 3,500 followers recently on Instagram. So I'm like, yes, on the road to that 10K, right?
Yeah, listen, everybody's got to start somewhere.
Right.
And I always love bringing on more faces of people showing that there's opportunity out here when it comes to stocks, when it comes to real estate, when it comes to credit. Like there's many stories of people winning out here, and there's people that look like you or me that people can identify with. So
And that's the most important to me too. Like, representation absolutely matters, especially in financial education, because we talked about Robert Kiyosaki, we talked about Dave Ramsey, we talked about Susie Orman, we talked about Grant Cardone, but none of those people are Black people, right? None of those people are talking about their experience acquiring wealth and through the experience that we can relate to. So it's important for me to share my journey because, like I said, I grew up with Section 8. I grew up with food stamps. Like, I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to be a Black man in America who work corporate. I know what it's like to start a business. I know what it's like to have the entrepreneurial drive, and how do you divide your time between working corporate and working on your passion and working on your dream. And I think all of that is important, right? The empowerment piece and believing that, first of all, it's possible, right? Because I have a daily battle at work where, they're like, what is your level of commitment to this company, right? That's the conversation. That's a real conversation. And I have to be tactful in my response and, let them know, like, I'm here, like, this is what pays the bills, but also let them know, like, did you Google me? Like, I did a TED Talk. And so I think, there's dissonance there too. Like, they're wondering, like, when is he going to make his move? What is that move going to look like? And I'm not quiet about the fact that I'm a hybrid entrepreneur, right? I use that term often. I work on my business when I'm not at work, and when I'm at work, you have my attention, you have my time, because I know there's an exchange happening there. But at the end of the day, like, my goal is for me.
for sure. And the thing is, people crack me up when companies are Googling people, ask them, well, listen, I'm here to be the best, whatever the name of the company is that I can be, employee, and then you go on about your day. Your off hours are your off hours. And this is part why, I'll be like, jobs ain't loyal. Y'all better be building up somewhere where you want to go or land to, because it only takes one person being like, you know what, yeah, this, and that's what people don't really acknowledge that, right?
No.
So, but they're gonna learn in this room. They're gonna learn. So, thank you for coming on. I don't want to suck up all your time. I know we had a little, time delay here, but what are some things you want to leave the audience with that you're looking forward to for 2020?
Well, for starters, I would like to leave everybody with my mantra, and I'm sure you probably say it all the time, but pay yourself first is key. Like, that is my thing. Make sure that you're before you pay anybody else, you're paying yourself. But 2020, it's halfway through. I turned 30 this year. I turned 30 May 15th.
30.
I'm excited about this next decade of life and what that looks like. But COVID has dampened a lot of, I think, plans that a lot of people have had. And depending on the kind of person you are, you either took advantage of the opportunity present, or you just kind of sat there and waited for things to go back to normal. And I'm definitely somebody who takes advantage of the opportunity. So I'm like juggling between 3 different book ideas right now. I definitely want to put out another book before the end of this year. I've been doing some writing, some freelance writing for publications. So I really want to get into Forbes and figure out how to make that happen. From social media perspective, I'm definitely looking for ways to continue to engage my audience and grow my audience. I joked about the 10K, but that's a goal for me, only because of the feature that it gives you with that swipe up. I think I'll be able to reach a lot more people, and I know that I want to create a course. I've been dragging my feet on it, but I want to create a course based off of the content in my book. So lots of things kind of
In the pipeline.
creating and brainstorming, but it's about the execution, that alignment and that execution. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Hey, listen, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and delete somebody because they need somewhere to be off my channel. I mean, these people wear me out. The internet is a place for trolls and people that ain't doing nothing. Okay, so all right. So anyway, listen. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sparing your time this afternoon. For those of you who are in my YouTube course, I will see you guys later tonight. For those of you in the Rise of 20%, I'll see you tomorrow. But thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everybody, his TED Talk is in the links. Also, we'll have more in the description after the show renders.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch.
All right. See you soon.
All right.
All right.